Hi, welcome to part 2 of Adolf Hitler's Karma. And in part 1, I talked about what he brought into this current present lifetime of his, what his consciousness came with, as it were, the unresolved issues that we analyzed through the South Node story. And then looking at the planets that conjunct it and the ruler, which is Saturn in his case, we start to sketch a personality. I want to look at the aspects to the South Node and to the ruler, because that tells us about what vexed him, what he stood against. Okay? So let's start with the square from Mercury to the South Node. Now, I know it's a really wide orb, but I'm going to push Mercury up to the 7th house, and because it's in an angular house, every planet in an angular house is just stronger, okay? Because the angular house is strong. So Mercury also resonates with the 3rd house because Gemini is ruled by Mercury. And then we have in Aries, Aries is the warrior, the fighter. And then we have the Venus-Mars conjunction forming an exact trine to the South Node. Now, you'd say trine is harmonious, but when we look at Saturn, which is still Hitler, right, because it's the ruler of the South Node, we see that Venus and Mars square Saturn. So we're talking about people who were, I feel that he and them were like using each other, right? Because kings or leaders don't rise alone. They need allies. But these people are Venusians, so they are friendly, but Venus here is retrograde. So let's look at these friends, with a grain of salt. And then you have Mars. Mars is not very friendly. And then so these people help him rise, but then they go against him. And looking at Saturn in the 10th house, historically speaking or traditionally, when we have Saturn in the 10th house and we're looking at the karma, we're talking about a person who has risen to the top and then fell. So because Saturn on its shadow, on its more negative side, has to do with death. Now, let's look to the other side. And here we see Uranus forming an exact square to the South Node. Uranus from the 12th house. The 12th house, traditionally, historically speaking, is the house of secret enemies. And Uranus was not opposing him, it was squaring him. Now, Uranus is about shock. It's about sudden accidents, and accidents that here come out of the blue because they're in the 12th house. They're hidden, right? And so in this case, I would say this is a metaphor, or this indicates a person who lost everything. It was just a catastrophe. And with that Saturn talking about a rise and a fall, perhaps in a past life, he was assassinated or committed suicide, which he did in the present life. But interestingly enough, these squares and the trine, they all have to do with relationships, because we're looking at Uranus in Libra. Libra is about relationship, right? Then you're talking about these planets from the 7th house of marriage. This is very interesting because if you look at the North Node, now the North Node is the remedy. If we talk about the South Node, which has its gifts, if you look at your chart and the South Node placement, you're going to look at it maybe more in the shadow sign, because of the reason these are the South Node issues is because this is where things are unresolved. But we also have gifts that we bring into this lifetime that we can use in order to evolve, to get to the North Node. Now, in Hitler's case, North Node lies in Cancer, and Cancer poses Capricorn. Of course, Cancer is about softening. It's about healing. It's about nurturing. So when you think about history, it just sounds so far-fetched, but his evolution, the way for him to evolve was to soften, to allow his heart to lead him, to form connections that are nurturing, protecting. Yeah. So look at that moon. The moon is the ruler of the North Node, right? Cancer. But the moon conjuncts the South Node by a wide orb, but it's part of the South Node, the soul memory of things that didn't go well or that didn't exist. The moon is our emotions. It's it's the mothering force in our life, in our childhood. But the moon also has to do with our past, right? Obviously. So when you see this kind of configuration, we know that this person, in order to go forward, had to go back and look at his past, look inside his heart before he can move forward to the North Node. That's a very interesting configuration. Okay, so that's kind of, in generally speaking, the remedy, right? Is Cancer softening. It's not about rising to the top and being on the top of the world and pursuing a career, right? Capricorn fashion. It's about Cancer. Cancer is the archetype of the Great Mother. So yeah, so I'm going to end this here. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. This is unraveling the whole karmic story is much more complex and probably longer. But in the next video, I want to look at the day when Hitler became the Führer. That was 1921, and look at the transits and the solar arcs that were going on that day. There are moments in our lives where the karma is ripe and you can make a leap forward if you are conscious. So there's choice. In evolutionary astrology is based on the idea that we do have freedom of choice. There are events in our lives where planets are triggered that have to do with the karma that sort of call us to make a change.